I want to start by kind of unpacking a little bit the title of my presentation. Why have I decided to call it Professional Activism? Well, as I say, I'm going to be describing this particular approach to documentary filmmaking that we've called strategic impact documentary. And this is a kind of form of production that exists in an emerging industry space. All right, so this is not going to be the kind of grassroots type work we saw a lot of today, and nor is it exclusively NGO work, although that might come into it a little bit as well. One of the things that's really interesting is we can't locate this work either exclusively in social movements or exclusively within the mainstream media. So it's going to challenge some of the distinctions that we've been kind of assuming a little bit along the way today. So my title encompasses two claims. Firstly, that what I'm talking about can be described as a form of activist media. And secondly, that it represents some kind of professionalisation. Well, professionalisation is some kind of useful way of thinking about what's going on here. Now, my claim to it being activist video is that it is self-consciously about producing forms of social change that are described by the word impact. These are generally very specific forms of ideally measurable social change. It doesn't mean that everything that is achieved from a film can be measured, and it doesn't mean that everything measured equals social change. The tweets is an example of that. But essentially that it's all about achieving some kind of tightly specified social change. So the best way to get a sense of that is to give you some examples. You may have seen an impact film, and you may not have actually been aware that you've seen an impact film. One of the key things to look out for is what they call an ask. At the end of the film, are you directed to a website? Are you asked to do something? That's a good sign that you might be watching an impact film. It's not 100% accurate, but it's something to look out for. So up the top there, we have a film called American Promise. This was a film that was made about the gap in educational attainment between black and white students, particularly male students in the United States. And it sought to try and achieve some kind of way of closing that gap, of improving the outcomes for young black boys in schools. The Invisible War, up here on the end, is a film about sexual assault in the US military. And this film, I'm going to talk about it a bit more later, but the aim of this film was to change how the US military treated accusations of sexual assault. All right, so you can see these are very tightly specified forms of social change. Bully, for example, in the middle there, is a film that was about trying to help kids have resources to deal with the kind of everyday experience of bullying. Any of these films, and any of the other films I'm going to talk about today, if you want to find out more about them as impact projects, Google the name and write impact report afterwards, and you'll get a whole lot of information about the film and what the filmmakers did, how it all worked, and what the kinds of impact is that they're claiming. So they're just a few of them, things like The End of the Line about overfishing and so on and so forth. There are lots of films that are like this. Now, so the first thing is, my first claim is that they're activist in that they're attempting to achieve forms of social change. Are they outside the mainstream? Now, here's an interesting question. Yes and no is the answer to that. Some of these films are quite significant films with reasonable audiences, as you'll see from some of the impact reports. So it's not a grassroots situation, nor is it necessarily the mainstream media. So in a sense, my first challenge is inside outside the right way to conceptualise activist media's relationship to the mainstream, or is it more of a continuum, or do we need to rethink that distinction? Can we reliably always make an assumption that there's an outside and an inside that's easily definable? Because I think what we might be seeing is the emergence of a third space